Welcome to Successful Storytelling Summit. I'm your host, Michael Arnold, and today we're about to sit down with Cara Snow. She works as the Technology Association of Oregon's Chief Community Engagement Officer and Chief of Staff. She's a high-energy, civically minded executive and originally from Atlanta, Georgia. She gave her TEDx talk, When a Penny Means So Much More, in 2017 at TEDx Peachtree. She began her career in tech before it was cool, leading human resources, sales, and software development teams. In 2016, she joined the Technology Association of Georgia as their Chief Development Officer, winning Atlanta's Business Chronicle and University of Georgia Alumni Association Top 40 Under 40. The Technology Association of Oregon recruited her for a similar role, and she claims Portland as her new home. Cara serves as the Innovation Awards Chair for the Tech Council of North America and is the recipient of Girls Inc. Bold Award and a Technology Association of Georgia Diversity in the Workplace Award. Let's learn a little bit more about Cara. That, you're this techie type person and you've got a techie type job, but your TEDx was not necessarily a techie TEDx. Can you share a little bit about how that came to be?
Yeah, so my TEDx really evolved from just kind of a family tradition that was, if you watch it, you obviously get that, but it was a tradition for my entire life. And I would tell people that my mother would shove my brother and I in front of a moving car if it meant that she could get money on the ground first. But she grew up in a family that was very poor. Like, her dad worked at the A&P grocery store for his entire career and raised 6 children. And so I think we forget that we have generations, and even today, where we've got so much inequity that there are people that really do value the money. And so she was just really frugal. And part of that was, finding money was a treat. Like, that's how she would get to buy things. And so it was always something that we did. And after she passed away and my brother really needed a way to connect back to her memory, that's the way that he sort of dealt with it. And so for years, we didn't talk about my mom being sick and losing her. We just talked about money. Like, it was just things you aren't supposed to talk about in your family, right? Politics, religion, and money. Money was like the one connection point. And as a devoted University of Georgia Bulldog, I was asked to give a commencement speech for my college during the commencement ceremonies a few years ago. And I was like, what is it that I really want to express to students? Because at that point, I had finished this tech career where twice I'd been recognized as a 40 under 40. And a lot of it was because there's not a lot of women in tech, and the body of a career in a really fast-paced industry can happen just more quickly than 40 or 50 years in the making. So I was like, okay, if I'm graduating from college, what is it that I'm focusing on in the long term? And but the penny thing made sense. Everybody knows a penny. And when you're a kid, the value of a penny is like, wow, it's like $1 million. And then it gets smaller and smaller as you get older, but you realize that they all add up. And so that's where it started, was really like, how do you inspire a graduating class? And it's like what you do every day that's ultimately going to be the crowning achievement of your life. And I just talked about it with pennies.
Right.
Well, thank you. I think part of what you're asking is like how you got invited.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know.
Next question.
I was going to say, I don't know if I can skip ahead, but what you just said about like you laughed several times and it was very relatable. So I do like every 6-month check-in with myself of like, what are my 6-month goals? What are my year goals? What are my 3-year goals? What are my lifetime goals? You can see a theme emerging with me.
Very goal oriented.
Consistently. And like your lifetime goals, you're supposed to make sure that everything you're doing on your daily, weekly, monthly basis are ultimately going to get you there. And
Yep.
so I did it with my team a couple of years ago. Maybe it was 2017, because that was the year I did the TED Talk. And I had written that one of my 3-year goals was that I'd wanted to do a TED Talk. And my team, the folks that were working for me, had been like really helpful when I was practicing for that commencement speech.
Mm-hmm.
And so one of them, who is a dear friend, was at lunch one day with a customer who was a volunteer coach. Mm-hmm. And she was talking about being a volunteer TEDx coach. And she said, my boss has that as a goal. And I have heard her speak, and I know her story, and I think that she would be really good. And so I met with the woman, and she was like, man, like, I really love what you're saying. She said, but we're full. Like, we have all of our speakers for this one. So can we put you on the docket for next year? Okay. And I was like, absolutely. And she said, I'll let you know when the application is open, and we'd love you to apply. And I said, okay, cool. My work world took place in Atlanta in a place called Tech Square. And the woman that owned the license in Atlanta, Jackie Chu, worked in Tech Square. 4 weeks before the TEDx in Atlanta, she calls me. We worked in the same building. She was like, I need you to meet me in the lobby. I was like, okay. She said, yeah, I want to talk about TEDx. I said, okay. And she says, I'm going to sit on a bench and you're going to tell me your story. And I want to hear how you would talk about this penny thing. I was like, oh, all right. So I did. And she goes, okay, it's funny. She goes, I like the message. We have had somebody bail. And she goes, and I don't know many people in this city that can be stage ready in 4 weeks without all the coaching that everybody else gets. And she's like, so I have a 10-minute spot. Our theme is beneath the surface. And I like this because it fits in really well, because it's not just a penny. It's so much more to you and your family and the world. And she's like, so I need you to tell the story similarly to the way that you just told me in that conversation. And she was like, I'm not gonna be able to provide you a dedicated coach. Like, we're gonna cobble together a coaching staff for you. And so, yeah. So 4 weeks later, I got up on stage and did it. And I tell people that I would not recommend my approach.
That's different. That's tough.
It's really different. And you underestimate how much work it is. And I think people watch TED Talks, and this as a fellow TEDxer, and they're like, wow, that person is so well-spoken and they're quick on their feet. And they don't know about all of the practice and the editing, and that if you mess up, you either have to go back and be edited, or you lose that opportunity, and they just splice it together as it makes sense. And the fact that you're pitching basically to a live audience, a virtual audience, and then an evergreen audience. And so it's when you realize that part. I mean, I, in hindsight, should have said I would like to wait until 2018. I would like to wait. Not that it wasn't an amazing experience, but I would never encourage anyone to go my route.
Yeah. Well, and the hard work, it's funny because, people ask me, you look so good up there. And I was so nervous. If you watch my hands, you can just see them shaking. When you're up there, you're just so nervous, and you have 500-600 people looking at you, and you're thinking, if I mess up, this is like millions of people that are really watching me. So it's a different experience, and to prepare for it is a lot of work. And most of the people that I talk to that want to do a TEDx, it's just like writing a book. They want a book, but they don't want to put the work into it, and it is a lot of work.
Michael, I will tell you, when I did my practice session the day before,
yeah.
So Jackie, the license owner, was helping me. She was like essentially my coach. And she's standing in the auditorium with her arms crossed, and she just stopped me. She's like, are you sick? I was like, no, what are you talking about? I'm not sick, I'm nervous. She's like, I have seen you on stage for years. That was awful. She's like, you got to go home and practice. And I'm like crying. I was like, oh my God, I'm never going to be able to do this. she's worked with me, and she knows that that's the kind of feedback that like gets me going.
Yeah, that's good.
And so that was good. And then another nice part, and the serendipity of these opportunities, the gentleman that put together my slides wound up being the dad of a woman I went to high school with, who was 3 years younger than me. And she and I were on swim team together. And as we were working on my slides, he was like, I remember your mom. She was always the loudest one in the stands. And I was like, wow, like what a cool, like, it just was so great. I mean, so the experience for me was so much more than just getting up on stage and sharing that story. It was really about my community coming together to give me the opportunity, to coach me through the opportunity, and
Yeah.
then, you know, have as good of a memory as I did of the woman who he was the one that came up with the idea for it ending with, you know, thanking my mom. Like that was his call. That was not mine.
Yeah, that was a nice touch. I like that at the end. What's like the challenge or the thing you needed to help most with what your passion is, the collecting of coins? You have a story of it started out as a kegger party, right?
Yeah, I
And,
started out as a kid.
and kind of grew from there.
I don't think we ever, and it was going to be like a cheap kegger. Like, I don't think we ever anticipated, we didn't anticipate what it would look like. And I think that's what made it, you know, when I started working on it, even in my short 4-week period, like, yeah, it was a cool story about like, for college students about your career, but like, go bigger than that. Like really, what is it? And like, it then became this story of impact. But you know, when you're in something so like intimately, it's really hard to like go back 3,000 feet and see the big picture. And so that's what the TEDx coaching team really helped me get to. And I had a small segment. I only had 10 minutes, and like that's not very long.
Yeah.
And so I had to cut out some of the details that are, again, so important to me, but not relevant in the story. And the thing that, and you may know this from Toastmasters, but that I really walked away from and really loved was how to tell a story more clearly.
Yep.
And, you know, I don't know if you're from the South, but we say things that don't make sense to the rest of the world.
I'm from Indiana, and I totally know what you're talking about.
I'm gonna carry you to the store. What are you talking about? You're gonna carry me? Like what you're fixing to do? You're fixing dinner? No, I'm fixing to go. And so like getting those colloquialisms out of my speech was hard, but it's been really helpful now living in a different region. And I think that going through the entire process made me a better communicator. And the assumption would be that if you're asked to do a TEDx, you're probably a really good communicator or storyteller already. And I think that's a misperception. Like anybody can be coached to learn some of these things. And it definitely, like I learned so much.
Yeah. So somebody that wants to give a TEDx talk, what kind of advice would you have for them other than don't do it the way you did it?
Don't do it the way I did it. I would say like, you need to speak that intention into existence, and like don't keep that just to yourself. If that's something you want to do, talk to people about it, because if your idea isn't resonating with the people in your world that are close to you, it's not going to resonate on a larger scale. And that feedback loop is going to be really important. And I think the consistency of what you're talking about, that's what makes a TEDx so compelling. Like you're basically being brought on stage because you're an expert. And I like your analogy of, well, I want to write a book. Well, okay, great. Like, what do you want to write about? I don't know. Well, what are you an expert at? Like a TEDx is basically your expertise on something in life. And so if you're passionate about it, that shows. And if you've done it a lot, that also shows. And if you don't have an idea yet, except that you just want to do a TEDx, then you probably need to figure out that idea, because their idea is worth sharing, right?
Exactly.
You got to have an idea.
What type of advice did you get about doing a TEDx talk that in hindsight you wish you would have ignored?
Yeah, that's the question that in your list I was struggling with because um, most people in my world see me doing a lot of public speaking, and so their assumption is that I didn't really need any advice.
Yeah.
Here's the advice that is this the one that I wish I hadn't ignored, or I'm glad that I did?
Either one.
People are like, oh, just relax, it's easy. No, it's not. That's the worst idea ever.
This is true. This is true. That's bad advice. Bad
That's
advice.
bad advice. Just relax, this is easy.
If you could sit in my seat, what question should I ask you that I haven't asked yet?
I like that too. Um, I would ask, what has been your next step with your passion project from your TED Talk?
Okay.
Because I don't have a good answer for that one, but it's one that I should think about because
Yeah.
I still do my thing and I pick up money and we still donate it and other people are still doing it and I still get pictures from folks around the country. At one point I had been in a leadership class and we thought maybe it becomes it was never going to become a nonprofit. Like it didn't seem like a sustainable business model. And I was like, the last thing I want is people mailing me like heavy boxes of change, which I also think is illegal. I'm not sure you can mail money like that way.
Yeah.
But somebody made the comment that it could be a good transition into a community impact model.
Mm-hmm.
And that if you could get neighborhoods thinking about small improvements
Mm-hmm.
that don't seem quite so overwhelming, like a trash can on a corner where there's generally a lot of garbage, that it would be an interesting scenario to build a business out of, like community impact in a box. And so that's, I'm saying it again, speaking it into the universe to maybe challenge myself to move forward with that at some point. But that's the question I would ask, like, what have you then done? Not just with the notoriety of being a TED talker, but what have you actually done with the work that you discussed in your TED talk?
Hopefully somebody hears this and they reach out to you and say, hey, I got a great idea for you.
Great idea.
Yeah, so that's
I
the
also
only reason
like
we're
dirty
doing
pennies.
this. The last thing I wanted to ask you is, we just talked about somebody's going to watch this and they want to know how they can help you collect more change and do more with your change finder program. How do they reach out to you?
They can reach out to me via LinkedIn, the way that you found me. That's my primary social media chain. So it's Cara Snow out there on LinkedIn, the one in Portland, Oregon. They can also feel free to email me, and they can do that at my work email, which is Cara, CARA.snow @techoregon.org. Those are probably the two best ways.
Okay.
And if they just want suggestions or they want to talk about crazy coins that they found, I'm always happy to have those conversations too.
Okay, great. Well, I appreciate your time, and it's been a pleasure talking with you. And like I said, I loved your TEDx talk. I totally related to it. And,
Thank you.
I hope we get to meet again and collaborate again, because that's what it's all about: spreading our ideas and sharing together. So I appreciate your time today.
I really appreciate you doing this. This is super fun. What a cool way to spend some quarantine time.